Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Chandra Ballabha Girivara Thari Gopi Chandra Ballabha Girivara Thari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chandra Ballabha Girivara Thari Gopi Chandra Ballabha Girivara Thari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chandra Ballabha Girivara Thari Gopi Chandra Ballabha Girivara Thari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parivrajaka Astotarasata Sri Sri Madhya Stavanga Abhai Charana Ravinda Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBT Founder Charya Save the whole world Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parivrajaka Astotarasata Sri Sri Madhya Stavanga Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Sahaya Sattva Ki Premza Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sisadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Sri Sri Radha Krishna Go Govara Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govara Ki Braj Bhumi Shivandama Ki Navdit Mayapur Dama Ki Prushtam Chitra Jagannath Puri Dama Ki Ganga Mai Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulasi Maharani Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Go Premanandi All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Guranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yo Asau Tvaya Kara Saroja Hata Patango Yosotraya Kara Saroja Hata Patango Yosotraya Kara Saroja Hata Patango Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chini Me Diksho Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chini Me Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chini Me Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hata Patango Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chini Me Muktam Na Te Smarasi Vakra Jata Varutam Muktam Nate Smarasi Vaktra Jata Varutam Muktam Nate Smarasi Vaktra Jata Varutam Kashto Anilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim Kashto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim Kashto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim Muktam Nate Smarasi Kashto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim Verse 14 Yo so Tvayakara Saroja Hata Patango Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakta Jata Varutam.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakta Jata Varutam.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakta Jata Varutam.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakta Jata Varutam.
Kaston Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Mukam Nate Smarasi Vakrajata Varutam.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakrajata Varutam.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakrajata Varutam.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakrajata Varutam.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakrajata Varutam.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakrajata Varutam.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Vaishnavis.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Mukam Nate Smarasi Vakrajata Varutam.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakrajata Varutam.
Kasto Nile Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Yoso Tvayakara Saroja Hatta Patango.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmanate Jayate Chinime.
Dikshu Brahman Brahmata Ejayate Chinime.
Mukam Nate Smarasi Vakrajata Varutam.
Muktam Nate Smarasi Vakrajata Varutam.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Kasto Nilo Harati Lampata Esha Nivim.
Ya,
Ya,
which,
which,
aso,
aso,
that,
that,
Tvaya,
Vaya,
Vayu,
Vayu,
Kara Saroja,
Kara Saroja,
with the lotus palm,
with the lotus palm,
Hata,
Hata,
struck,
struck,
Patanga,
Patanga,
the ball,
the ball,
Dikshu,
Dikshu,
in all directions,
in all directions,
Brahman,
Brahman,
moving,
moving,
Brahmata,
Brahmata,
restless,
restless,
Ejayate,
Ejayate,
disturbs,
disturbs,
Akshini,
Akshini,
eyes,
eyes,
Me,
me,
of me,
of me,
Muktam,
Muktam,
scattered,
scattered,
Na,
Na,
not.
not.
Te,
Te,
your.
your.
Smarasi,
Smarasi,
are you mindful
are you mindful of?
of? Vakra,
Vakra,
curling.
curling.
Jata,
Jata,
of hair.
of hair.
Varutam,
Varutam,
bunches.
bunches.
Kasta,
Kasta,
giving trouble.
giving trouble.
Anila,
Anila,
wind.
wind.
Harati,
Harati,
takes away.
takes away.
Lampata,
Lampata,
like a man attached to women.
like a man attached to a woman.
It's interesting, in other places this word's translated quite differently from this. In the Shastastikam it's translated as being a debauchee. Esha,
Esha,
this,
this is
Nivim,
Yevim,
lower garment.
lower garment.
Translation. My mind is already restless, and by playing with the ball, moving it all about with your lotus-like palm, you are also agitating my eyes. Your curling black hair is now scattered, but you are not attentive to arranging it. Are you not going to arrange it? Like a man attached to woman, the most cunning wind is trying to take off your lower garment. Are you not mindful of it? Responsively. My mind is already restless,
My mind is already restless.
and by playing with the ball,
And by playing with the ball,
moving it all about with your lotus-like palm,
moving it all about with your lotus-like power,
you are also agitating my eyes.
you are also agitating my eyes.
Your curling black hair is now scattered,
Your curling black hair is now scattered,
but you are not attentive to arranging it.
but you're not attentive to arranging it.
Are you not going to arrange it?
Are you not going to arrange it?
Like a man attached to women,
Like a man attached to women,
the most cunning wind is trying to take off your lower garment.
the most cunning wind is trying to take off your lower garment.
Are you not mindful of it?
Are you not mindful of it?
So here we see how Agnidra is expressing his desires in a very interesting way. But also, it's quite interesting the way that you see when a person is agitated by lust, not man or woman, it doesn't really matter, it's the same effect for both. How, when the object of their lust, like in this case it's a woman, whatever she does is agitating him. And he's becoming more and more inspired to want to see her naked. And that's what he's saying here. It's like, the wind's trying to take off your lower cloth. He's saying, oh, I hope it blows harder. He wants it to take off her lower cloth because, and we see this, it's like, whenever there's for a man, whenever he sees a woman who's attractive, and especially in this day and age, we see how, most women dress. The whole purpose is to attract the attention of men. And so the man's attention is attracted, and men are doing the same thing. It's like, you see, these people, they go to the gym, they build up their muscles, and they like I don't know if it's here, but at most places they like to walk around bare-chested, and because a woman's attracted to the strong chest of a man. So it's the same kind of thing, that they're acting in ways to attract the opposite sex. I'll just read on. The girl Pravachiti, this is Prabhupada's purport. The girl Pravachiti was playing with a ball in her hand, and the ball seemed like nothing but another lotus flower captured by her lotus-like palm. Because of her movements, her hair was loose, and the belt holding her cloth was giving way, as if the cunning wind were trying to make her naked. She paid no attention to arranging her hair or fixing her dress. As Agridra tried to see the girl's naked beauty, his eyes were very agitated by her movements. So this pastime here, it's not a very long chapter, it's only 23 verses, but this pastime here, as we can understand, Agridra, he's the son of Priyavrata. The fourth canto describes his descendants of Uttanapad, and the fifth canto is describing, not the whole fifth canto, but a good part of the first half, is describing the descendants of Priyavrata and how they rule the world, rule the universe. And so here it's describing how, at the start of the chapter we see how Agnigrahi is performing tapasya, following the instructions of his father, and one of the ambitions of his father is that he will rule the world and create progeny. And so in order to create progeny he needs a wife. So then he performs tapasya with the goal of achieving a wife. Brahma becomes satisfied with him, so he sends the most attractive of his society girls, the heavenly apsaras. And as we can understand from this description here, she's extraordinarily beautiful. And he becomes attracted. And not only that, just by a form, but by the way she's conducting herself. She's it describes one of the previous chapters, one of the previous verses, how she had a particular way of behaving that was attracting the mind of Agnigraha. And so she was doing different things. She was walking around, striking various attractive poses and things like that. And he was sitting there in meditation with his eyes, half closed, and he heard her ankle bells tinkling. We hear this many times, Same with Menaka, she was attracted by one of the sages. And so the sound, the movement, he opens his eyes to see. Oh, very attractive. And so what is happening as he's seeing her form and contemplating his form, his mind and senses become agitated. And this is described by Krishna in the end of the second chapter. He says, while contemplating the objects of senses, the person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And then from lust comes the world of remembering. Remembering is world of intelligence lost. When intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So we see how there's this cycle, this downward cycle, when we start to contemplate the objects of the senses. It just, sometimes very rapidly, leads to degradation. And this is what we see happening in the world around us. This whole world is completely bewildered by lust, completely overcome by lust. In the third chapter, towards the end of the third chapter, Arjuna, because Krishna is explaining to Arjuna the difference between religious activities and material activities. And then Arjuna asks Krishna, what is it that bewilders one? What is it that forces us to act, even it seems unwillingly? And what does Krishna answer? Very well-known verse. Kamayesha, Krodesha, Rajaguna Samudruha, Mahashani, Mahapatma, Virinam, Himaram. He said, is it lust only, Arjuna, which is born of the mode of passion and is the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world? And this is what this society is governed by, is lust. And it's not just, the people outside, it's also us. We're also driven by it to varying degrees. The advantage we have is we're aware of it. And we are aware of the danger of it and how it's detrimental. Unfortunately, the non-devotees are not aware of it. They're just thinking, this is great. Let me incite the lust more and more and more, because then I can enjoy my senses more and more and more. And Srila Prabhupada would sometimes compare it to a person who has a fever, and they're trying to increase the fever, rather than, because when you have a fever, the natural thing is you want to reduce the fever so that you don't feel so sick. It's like when you have fever, you get aches and pains all over the body, headaches, vomiting, etc. So this is what the condition of this modern society is like, is that they're in a feverish state and they're trying to increase the fever. And as we know, if the temperature gets to a certain level, then death results. And this is what's happening in the society. The society is dying, and it's becoming an animal society. And this is one thing that I see whenever I travel, even like coming into Zurich yesterday, we came down past the waterside, and you see all these young men and women, not quite naked, but close, and they're thinking this is wonderful. You know, like men are thinking it's wonderful to show off their muscles and things like this, and the girls are thinking it's great to show off their legs and their breasts and all this kind of thing. And they're not realizing the detrimental effect this has, because what is happening is society is becoming, you know, as Krishna says, this all-devouring sinful enemy of the world is lust. So as the lust is increasing, the world is becoming devoured by this. And we see, you know, if we just look at the effects of this lust that's happening, well, just like I was in Italy before here, and it's an unusually hot season. Like we drove over the mountains coming here, like 2 years ago when we drove over the mountains it was really cold. And it's the similar time of year. And we drove over the mountains yesterday, it was quite warm, it was like 25 degrees. And so we can see how due to the sinful activities of society, that things are changing. It's the effect of sin. Is that the world is becoming more and more difficult. In Italy they haven't had rain for months, which is unusual for this time of year. And so, you know, and they'll say, oh, it's a global warming, it's this, it's that, you know, so many things. But, you know, the scientific aspect of it, that may be the fact. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a scientist. But if we look at the scriptural, you know, understanding of it, we can understand it's a result of sin. Why do people want to have, you know, all these machines that produce so much pollution, and you know the factories that produce so much pollution? Why do we have all these things? Because we want to gratify our senses. You know, it's like you have a nice car, you know, you drive on these fancy, like a Maserati or a Ferrari or something like that. What's the benefit of that? You know, I mean, these things do hundreds of kilometers an hour, but you can't do that because of speed limits. So what's the advantage of having such a fancy car? Gratify the senses. You attract the opposite sex. You know, if someone pulls up next to a pretty girl in a beat-up old car, or he pulls up next to a girl in a brand new Ferrari, which one's likely to be more attractive? You know, it's all focused around sense gratification. The whole material society is focused around sense gratification. And for us, you know, we need to be aware of this, very, very strongly aware of this, and also to be aware of how we also are enamored by these things. Because, okay, we're practicing, we're following the path of bhakti, but we still have our conditioning. And these conditionings are very difficult to overcome, because the conditionings are very deep-seated in the heart. They go very, very deep. And it's not like, I mean, some devotees we see, they come to the practice of bhakti and very quickly they give up these desires. But mostly, at least for most of us, it takes time. And it takes time to overcome these desires. And one of the things I see, which I find interesting, is that oftentimes we'll see, we come to devotional service and we have our conditioning, and we tend to impose that conditioning on the process of bhakti. And you know, we even think that this is actually part of the process. And you see this, you know, like if you look at, for instance, I'm just trying to think of a practical example. I mean, I see it in deity worship all the time, how devotees sort of bring in the things they did when they were growing up in the world. They bring that into, even like sometimes you see with the Indian congregation, when they come, they have conditionings that they've had from their upbringing, etc. And they'll start to do those types of practices when they come to the temple. And we think, oh, because coming from India, it must be bona fide. But it's not like that. You know, the practices we follow are defined by our acharyas. You know, Prabhupada, you know, when he went to the USA, he explained to Brahmananda at one point that for the first few years he was just testing the waters to see what it was like and what would work in terms of the practice of bhakti. And then he gave a very, very specific program. You look at the morning program we follow now, that was designed by Prabhupada to keep us all engaged in devotional service, to help us to control the mind and senses. And I was having a conversation with a senior Vaishnava in
Villa Vrindavan when I was there, and he was noticing how, because he was Prabhupada Dasa, so he was noticing how from when he joined, how things are becoming changed. Things are, I wouldn't say watered down, but they're definitely becoming changed. And one of the things I feel is important for us to do is to try and understand what our acharyas have given us, especially what Srila Prabhupada has given us, and try to our best capacity to maintain that and to see that sort of process continues, and to try to keep it as intact as we possibly can. Of course, the natural effect of time is that these things will become diluted to some extent. It's just the natural effect of time. And so we need to, to the best of our capacity, try to keep it focused. But getting back to the point here, the way that this girl Purvachiti is dressed, the way she's behaving, is designed to attract. It's purposeful. And she's really focusing on attracting his mind, because that was the task she was given by Lord Raman, was to attract his mind, have children with him, and to help populate the universe. That was the task she was given. And of course, because he's a great personality, he's the son of Priyavrata. Priyavrata is the son of who? Swayambhuva Manu. So great personalities. Therefore, the children they had, 9 sons he had, were great personalities. They all became emperors of the world. So very, very great personalities. But I think one of the lessons we can take from here is that okay, we understand what this type of behavior is and the effect it has, and let's try not to ourselves get involved in that. And we see in Vaishnavism, for instance, we have specific dress. And sometimes you see that people that come to Krishna consciousness may not be attracted wearing dhoti or sari, whatever. But there's a purpose behind it. Because if you look at the dress that materialistic people wear, one of its main emphasis is to try to emphasize the body, to try and show the body. Tight-fitting clothes and tight-fitting jeans. We used to have an expression when I was a child. It's like those jeans are so tight they look like they've been poured into it. It's like they're just so tight-fitting. And you see, and also they have these, when I'm in Australia, I go to a gym, and I mean, I like the idea of sort of keep maintaining the body, but I don't like the idea of the way that people dress there, because it's quite incredible. I mean, the clothes they wear are so tight. And there's a purpose. They want to attract the minds of others. Because I wear my shorts and loose-fitting t-shirt. I don't find that I'm inhibited in any way in doing the exercise at the gym. So they can't use the excuse, it helps me to exercise. No, it's got nothing to do with it. It's all about trying to attract the minds of others, attract the senses of others. And so, as devotees of Krishna, and as those who are trying to follow this culture and understand and apply this culture and overcome the influence of the most mature nature, we need to see how the various activities, or the way we conduct ourselves, can have effect. And this is a real important aspect of the culture of Krishna consciousness, is to be aware of our activities and how our activities can have effect on others. You see, when we're in the mode of ignorance, we couldn't care less. When we're in the mode of passion, we act in such a way, and we want to have these, passionate and lusty influences on others. When we're in the mode of goodness, we look at our activities and we look at the effect they have. And this is the mode of goodness, is one contemplates the actions they're doing and the effect it has on others. And so, mostly you see people in the mode of passion, they tend not to contemplate the effect. They tend to just see, well, I guess they do contemplate the effect to an extent because they want to agitate someone's senses. But they don't see the detrimental side of it, because they see it as gratifying the senses. But someone who's in the mode of goodness, one of the I guess the main symptom of goodness is illumination. You should see things as they are. So when we cultivate the mode of goodness, we can see the detrimental effect of conducting ourselves like we see here in Purvachiti and Agnigraha conducting themselves. I mean, they've got a specific purpose, and their purpose is come to the point of producing progeny, right? And it's not like that, Purvachiti's doing it to everyone. She's just doing it in front of Agnigraha. And we see that in marriage is sometimes a wife will conduct herself in a way to attract the mind of her husband. But she does it privately. She doesn't do it in public. That's a chaste woman. A chaste woman will act to, entice her husband or to control her husband through her various feminine ways, but she won't do it in public. But we see in this day and age that all the men and all the women are out there just trying their best to attract the minds of the opposite sex. And they'll, for those of you who go out and do Sankirtan, you're probably quite aware of this. It's incredible the way that people act. I mean, here it's kind of, I guess it's not so bad because it's not like it's a hot country. But where I live in Australia, it's a hot country. I live in the northern part of the country, which is even hotter. And sometimes, you go to the temple, it's like, you kind of think when you're at the temple it'll be a sanctuary from all this type of stuff. When we have the Sunday feast, all these people, they come from town, they're just like, they don't have very many clothes on. And so it can be quite challenging. And also we have, at the farm where I live, we have what is called a Krishna village, which is like a yoga school. And so instead of us being on the farm in our ashram and them being outside, and there's kind of like, almost like a barrier in a sense, they're on the farm. And so sometimes their conduct is not the best, at least from the perspective of Vaishnavism. So you need to learn how to control the mind and senses. But one of the points I'm trying to get here is the best way, or not the best way necessarily, but what will help us to support that sense control is by understanding what is proper conduct and not trying to act in a way to promote the body, really. Because the body's just a temporary, ephemeral thing. It comes, it goes. And if we focus on trying to enjoy the body, trying to attract others to our body, and trying to become attracted to others' bodies, what happens as a result of that, as Krishna's saying, it's like this downward spiral. He says in the second chapter, how it's a downward spiral, and one falls down again into the material pool. So if we're acting to try to, promote the body and to become attracted to bodies and have others attracted to my body, then it's just going to result in repeated birth and death. So, it's just going to bring us to the cycle of repeated birth and death, and not necessarily very, very elevated. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday about this, and sometimes you may talk to guests at the temple and talk about, if we act like this, we'll take birth as a dog, or something like that. And then sometimes the response you get, well, it wouldn't be so bad to take birth as a dog. Well, okay, but you're thinking of a dog living in a place like Switzerland. What about a dog who lives in a place where they eat dogs? Or something like that, you could be on someone's table. So, don't be deluded into thinking that taking birth again in a material body is a palatable thing. Because you have no control. Okay, you might think, well, if I take birth again here in Switzerland, that's fine because it's a nice country and it's wealthy and it's this, it's that. But you don't know where you're going to take birth again. You might take birth in one of these war zones. You might take birth in Ukraine or something like that, or in Gaza. Imagine being born in Gaza right now. That wouldn't be to take birth in Gaza right now, you never know from one day to the next if you're even going to wake up the next morning. Someone might drop a bomb in your head and that's it. So, don't be deluded into thinking that, birth in this material world or this material existence is a nice thing. Because it's not. It's a very, very difficult situation being in the material world. Lord Chaitanya he likened this material world to a place, he likened this material world to being like a place where people, like a ditch where people pass through. And the thing is, people in this material world, they're so attracted to that. They're so attracted to enjoying this place. But if you look at it, it's not a very attractive place at all. But this is why it's important that we cultivate, the mode of goodness, at least. Because in the mode of passion, we're attracted to it. We think this is a nice place. In the mode of weakness, we have no awareness at all. But in the mode of goodness, you can actually see the nature of this material world. And also the mode of goodness is very helpful to develop our spiritual understanding. Okay, any questions at all? Yes, good.
Can you make some practical examples of bringing our conditioning into bhakti? You mentioned something.
I mean, I can't think of anything right now, but I mean, I see it all the time. How even with understanding the philosophy, sometimes we see devotees will present an understanding of philosophy that's based on our conditioning. And the thing is, it's like just because we come to the practice of devotional service, it doesn't mean the conditioning is gone. Sometimes it can take many, many years, or sometimes even lifetimes, to overcome that conditioning. And this is why it's really important to cultivate goodness, because then we start to see what is the difference between me, say the mind, the consciousness, the senses. Because, for instance, like you may be, you have some kind of particular sensual attraction, or sensory attraction, not necessarily sensual, but a sensory attraction. And then, because you're really strongly attracted to that thing, you'll start to rationalize how it's okay to, and it could be against the regular principles, for instance, but you'll start to rationalize how that's okay. And we do tend to do that. We rationalize these various things. I mean, I can't think of a concrete example, unfortunately, right now. But, like, when I see it happening, you see that. You see how we're bringing these things into emotional service. I think it's like, it's not really up to, it's not really for me to judge others because of things they're doing. I think really what it's is for us to see how we're doing that, and to try to become introspective and look at our activities, and to see, are these activities driven by the desire to serve Krishna, or are these activities driven by the desire to satisfy my senses? And even, someone may be eager to go out on Sankirtan. Why? Because they meet a lot of pretty girls. Then you can see that's their conditioning. But then if someone's driven to go out on Sankirtan and their desire is to give people Krishna consciousness through whatever means they can, then that's driven by the desire to serve. It's driven by this connection to Krishna. So yeah, I think it's just good to analyze our actions and see what's our motive. Because that's really the essence of understanding this thing, is what is your motive? Is your motive to please Krishna, or is your motive to please yourself? And if your motive is to please yourself, ultimately it will be unsuccessful. If your motive is to please Krishna, then ultimately you will be successful. It may take time, it's not going to happen overnight usually, but if we have the motive to please Krishna, then we will become successful in service. But success doesn't mean, having a big house and a nice car, and success means going back to Godhead, developing Krishna consciousness. But it's even like if you look at the material world, their metrics are completely out of whack, because their idea of success, just like when we were coming here, when we got to Switzerland, everyone's got a nice car. You don't see too many beat up cars around here, like old cars with rust and this and that. You just don't. In Australia, you see them all the time, especially in the countryside. So that's for them, that's a metric of their success. Is I've got a nice car, got a nice house, got a good job, got a nice wife, a nice husband. For them, that's successful. But then, as we see, this is what happens here, is Agnicca becomes so attached to Purvachit, he's got like a drop-dead beautiful wife. And he becomes so attached to her that he wants to, even in his next life, he wants to go and be with her, so he winds up going to Pitri-loka. I mean, is that really a success? From my perspective, I would think not. I think that's, because it's still a material world. And it means, if you're in the material world, if you go to Pitri-loka, it still means birth and death again. And that's not successful. Successful means we go back to the spiritual realm. We don't take birth again in this material world. But materialistic, and this is the problem, is because the society that is around us, not necessarily the society we live in, but the society that's around us, it's permeated by this concept of what success is to have more and more material facility and better material facility. And that's very evident in a country like Switzerland. Because the material facility here is probably better than what you might see in other countries. If you go to poorer countries, things. So and this whole, even like driving here and coming through some of these villages with all these like wooden houses and stuff, you can see, and they've got all these nice flowers out the front, they've got all the designs on their house, the painted patterns and things. You can see people are really house proud. They're really attached to their house. And what's going to be the result of that? When they die, they'll take birth as a mouse or a cockroach in their house. Is that successful? I mean, who wants that? Just because you're attached to a place where you live. It's just a place to live for a short period of time. So we need to really cultivate our understanding of what is success in this material world and how to achieve it. Well, not just in the material world, what is success for the living entity and how to achieve it. And by associating materialists, by associating with their ideas, you're not going to achieve it. Definitely not going to achieve it. Anything else? Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, on the same topic, so, just from my observation,
Do a long press. Long press.
I haven't seen it. I don't know what it would look like someone overcomes their conditioning, because I've seen like
Yeah.
So
you see and read about it all the time. Prabhupada's a perfect example.
wouldn't it I've seen that it usually ends up that, at least okay, my experience living in the Brahmacharya ashram since some time, people try to overcome their conditioning, but then it comes to a point when you realize, I've got to engage my conditioning.
Yeah.
And then by engaging the conditioning, the idea is that eventually that conditioning will fall away.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, because Narad Muni does talk about this pravritti marg, yeah? And it is a bona fide practice, but it's dangerous. Yeah? Because when you're associating with the objects of the senses, there is the risk you can become overwhelmed by them. So if one can be peaceful in the Brahmacharya ashram, this is the key, you have to be peaceful. Whatever ashram you're in, you have to be peaceful. And not wanting other things. If one's peaceful, then fine. But it's not just within in Krishna consciousness. If you look in other religions, for instance, where you find people have tried to practice a life of celibacy and they're not capable or ready for it. And you see, for instance, in the various church organizations over the generations, how much abuse there's been. So that's the risk of trying to practice a life of celibacy when there's not adequate support network. Oftentimes you get these young men, they're sent out to be priests somewhere in a distant place with no one else, and they still have in their mind this desire to enjoy the senses. The senses are really overwhelmed by lust. So it's really important that one is we have support, whatever ashram we're in, we have people we can go to and talk to. And this is Nrsimha, he talks about this Bhuyamakiti Prishati, the ability to be able to reveal your mind to someone and also inquire submissively. So that if you are struggling, you can go and talk to someone without the fear that it's going to wind up on Facebook. And become public property. Because otherwise, what tends to, and this is another problem, of this sort of high-tech age, is your private life winds up becoming very public, and there's no boundaries in terms of what people will put up on the internet. And it's just as Kali Yuga progresses, we're seeing that I don't know if you use Twitter or any of these social media things, but it's like I spend most of my time blocking things because it's just it's not the sort of stuff I use it for service to promote deity worship, but the amount of stuff you have to block, it always gets to the point where I think, is it worth it having a social media account? Because what happens is when your private life goes public like that, you tend to shut down and not reveal the things that are concerning you. Because every time I do, I get hurt by somebody, or they betray my trust. So the tendency is we shut down more and more and more and more, and in that way, it shuts down an avenue we have for trying to process these things and deal with these things. So support network is very important, whatever ashram you find yourself in, that you have people you can talk about it to. And then also, I think another aspect of whatever ashram, because I was also once a brahmachari, believe it or not, a long time ago. You have to be realistic with yourself. Are you suited to this ashram or not? You have to be, there's no, see, when I was a brahmachari, it was, the preaching was, it was a disgrace to go into another ashram. It was a fall down to become a grihasta. I don't think that's as prevalent these days as it was when I was a brahmachari. Even in the 70s, the sannyasis used to preach so heavily about how fallen the grihastas are, and they're doing it to a whole room full of grihastas, mind you, which was kind of interesting. But you have to be realistic about yourself. You have to be able to have honest assessments of where you're at, and also not be overwhelmed by the moment. Meaning, because we are affected by the modes of nature. We're not transcendental. It's as simple as that. We're affected by the modes of nature. And we need to see how sometimes we're more affected by ignorance, sometimes passion, sometimes goodness. And it's, as Krishna describes in the Gita, it's constantly in flux. So sometimes where you might get, you might go through a period of a day or two or something like that where you're starting to feel, oh, maybe I should be a grihasta. Just be patient. Don't jump on it. Just see if that's an ongoing sort of theme for you. Then okay, maybe do something about it. But it's just something that comes and goes. Don't worry about it. Be patient with yourself.
I also I was thinking more along the lines of condition, Srila Prabhupada also, you see, he had a nature. It looks like that at least. From when he was born, and he was able to do business, he was a good chemist or pharmacist. And he was a kavi, poetic person, and it looked like he used all of that for Krishna, and he was empowered especially. So like an artist, he would also continue to be an artist for Krishna. Question is to the degree he gets empowered in that way. So one can be he gets super realizations being an artist. So what I've seen, I've never seen it from my perspective. I haven't seen someone change their conditioning. Okay, I'm this way, but now I'm going to be a completely different personality. So that's how I imagine what it would mean to overcome conditioning. But I don't see that ever happens. That's
Yeah,
what-
but it's not like, see, like when you're using it in material life, or when it's sort of impelling you towards material life, then it's conditioning. When you're using it in the service of Krishna and it becomes purified, then it becomes nature. Yeah, it's just like, you know, someone, like you say, Prabhupada is Kavi, you know, he's a poet. And so he uses that in Krishna's service. So that's him, that's the spirit soul expressing himself, because each spirit soul is completely unique. No two spirit souls are alike. And the goal we're working towards is to try to realize our actual nature, who we are, and what we are, and overcome the conditioning. So it's just like, if you give the example of a mirror. When the mirror is covered by dust, I mean, sometimes it can be so covered by dust you don't even realize it's a mirror. Then by the process of cleansing, gradually you come to see this is a mirror, and be completely clean so it's perfectly clean, then you know you can see yourself very clearly in the mirror. So the process of devotional service is the same. Is in the beginning, you know, when we're completely conditioned by the material nature, we have no understanding of who we are. We have no understanding of our nature as a servant of Krishna. And so this, you know, Lord Chaitanya says, Chaito Dharma Marjana, Bhava, you know, this cleansing process, it cleanses the heart, the mirror of the heart, so that one comes to the point of understanding their transcendental nature. So what you find happening as you progress in devotional service, is more and more the conditioning disappears. More and more the self becomes revealed. Yeah? It's not like, you know, it's like a switch. You know, you just switch from one thing to the other. You'll find that the conditioning goes away, and because even what's being manifested in your conditioned state, a part of that is you, who you are, but you're conditioned. You're influenced by the most material nature. So, you know, you may have a particular propensity to do some activity, just like you mentioned, you know, like an artist. You know, then you know, they may be a great artist and they're painting pictures of girls or handsome men and stuff like that, you know. But then, as they become purified, they lose the taste to paint things like that, and their taste more becomes to paint Krishna and his wonderful pastimes. I have a friend in Australia, Ram Prasad, he's a brilliant artist. But before he was painting things like, you know, beaches and things and stuff like that, but now he just paints Krishna, and he's finding great satisfaction in that. Well, he's been an artist, you know, he's probably been an artist for a long time. But you know, so you find that the propensity doesn't necessarily change, but the motivation changes. And you usually see if the propensity stays there, it's probably this is part of the nature of the self, that individual self.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. Yes, bro.
Babu, you mentioned about Mataji's dressing very attractively, and sometimes, at least I see that also devotee Matajis, they're taking a lot of ornaments, beautiful saris, scarf, and also ankle bells. So would it not be better if they dress a little bit more modestly? Or?
Yeah, but you can't also deny the nature of the living entity. The thing is like, you know, if someone has, for instance, Sudra tendencies, right? They get satisfaction from working hard. When they sweat and when they have to strain to do things, they feel satisfaction. And you can't not satisfy the senses. You can't not do that because that's the nature of the self. But what's your motive? You have to look at the motive. Why do you do that? So if our Vaishnava ladies or our Vaishnavis, if they're dressing in a way to attract the men, that's not a good thing. You know, dressing, behaving in a way. Of course, when they're single, they need to do that. You know. Otherwise, how are they going to get married? You know? But, you know, it's not the way of promoting licentious behaviour. It's not like, like you're a strong-looking young man. You start, going out there and sweating and working hard, and you walk around the temple with your sweaty upper body showing and stuff. That's not good. You sweat. Okay, go have a shower and dress yourself appropriately, and cover the body up, because our goal is not to attract the senses, not to agitate, because this is really what happens, is when we behave like this, we agitate the senses of ourselves and others. And this is improper behaviour. And the thing is, we all have our natures, and we need to engage that nature in Krishna's service, not we try to. And this is something, I think in my early days of devotional service I was probably part of it, because that was just, it was all about, the sannyasis and the brahmacharis and, the women of this and women of that, there was all this like trash-talking women all the time. And the fact of it is, they are also devotees of Krishna. They are also spirit souls. So we can't, just like anyone, children, we have to give them the opportunity to engage in Krishna, equal opportunity to engage in Krishna service. We have to give the Vaishnavis equal opportunity. We have to give the men equal opportunity to engage in Krishna service. Otherwise, how will they go back to Godhead? And this has to be our focus. It's not just because I'm agitated by somebody, therefore I want to suppress them. You're the one with, I'm not saying you personally, but you're the one with the problem. Why project that onto somebody else? Just because you find women attractive, okay, fine, get married. But don't, try to oppress a group of individuals because you can't control your senses. Actually, there's one time, I can't remember who it was, they were talking with Prabhupada, and they were complaining how the brahmacharis were attracted to the women. And their idea was they should somehow or other suppress the women. And Prabhupada said, tell the brahmacharis to go live in the forest. So, we need to be realistic. It's our problem. If we're attracted by something, if we're sensually attracted by something, own up, own the problem. Don't try and project it to somebody else. And then try to, work on overcoming.
My point was more like some Matajis say they don't want to marry, but they still dress in a very attractive way. And for me, with the example as a Prabhu, if I do a lot of training and I have every tattoos, I want to show off, and so it's like a little bit the same. And
yeah, exactly.
Sometimes we are all about these ankle bells in the scriptures, so maybe we can just not wear them.
You find them disturbing?
No, just think why the scriptures always telling something, and so.
Yeah, I mean, I hear ankle bells all the time, but they're not the ankle bells I want to hear. I want to hear his ankle bells. But yeah, the thing is, it's like you can't suppress people's nature. Women like to dress up. Women like to, wear jewelry and things like that. That's just the nature. Just like men like to do certain things. The idea is to engage that nature in Krishna's service, and then you become purified of the material side of it. What will happen is you no longer dress up or do whatever it is you do to satisfy the senses. You do these things to satisfy Krishna. Anyone else?
I had a comment and a question, if you please allow. I had a comment and a question. The comment was that in the past, especially in our temple, it has happened that ladies were not allowed to sing because it was too attractive for the men. And when I hear comments like these, I feel like this is a nice story actually, where of Purvachitti and Agnitvara, that it's not about the fact that Purvachitti was attractive, but the fact that he was attracted. So
she was definitely attractive.
Yeah,
that she was like, mind-boggling.
Exactly, and it's not just about the problem lies with the opposite sex, but sometimes we should introspect. Maybe the problem also lies with us.
But that's the real point. It's like, if I remember Kirtananda saying years ago that if one's in the proper, mind, well not proper, but if one has the mindset, even a chicken looks attractive. But you see this, bestiality is a reality. People have sex with animals. So if one's overcome by lust, there's no discrimination. Prabhupada one time said homosexuality means the person is so overcome by lust that any hole will do. They have no discrimination on who they're going to have sex with. They couldn't care as long as they have sex. And so this is the thing, is we really need to understand what it is, how lust affects us. As Krishna says, it's the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. There's a string of verses here, I'll just read them to you, that Krishna talks about lust and how it affects the living entity. So in the second chapter, we read that already. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. So different degrees. Some people very lusty, some people not so lusty. Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by this eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting place of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Therefore, Arjuna, or best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curbed this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses and slaying this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So that's the enemy we all have. It's not like anyone's different. We all have this enemy, and why can't women lead kirtan? If they know how to do it. Why can't you see like when I mean, because I joined ISKCON in the 80s, and that was like a time when I looking back at it now, I feel that women were quite, Vaishnavas were quite suppressed. Now I see it's changing. Well, it has changed over the last few years, where we're like becoming an equal opportunity employer. We're giving ladies and men the same opportunities, and kids. Like where I live in Australia, it's a large community, a very eclectic community, and we have devotees from practically newborn babies up to 80, 90-year-old people, all ranges. And anyone can lead kirtan, anyone can give classes if they know the philosophy. Anyone can cook for the deities, anyone can do service, because ultimately we're all servants of Krishna. And we need to, facilitate people coming to that understanding of who they are. They're Krishna's service. But what happens is that when we oppress one particular group of individuals based on their body, they don't want to be devotees. They want to go do something else. They want to go somewhere else where they feel they're not being discriminated against. That's just a normal, natural response. So, I learned a lot getting married. Yeah.
So you spoke about how we see in the story of Agnitvara how this attachment and attraction to the wife was so overwhelming that he even wanted to pass on with her, etc. And then I was thinking that you also mentioned how this whole way of how this attraction to sense gratification works. It has a purpose.
Yeah.
And as devotees, especially young devotees, when we are operating in the world, for example, people enter into matrimony because there is some level of attraction. So it's not like attraction is absolutely out of the window. Of course, many other factors are there, but at the same time, some level of attraction is also kind of part of the whole matrimonial arrangement.
Yeah, well, it has to be there. If that's not there, marriage is not going to work. Like, if you marry a man and you feel he's not attracted to you, that's not going to be very inspiring to you. You know, especially like, you know, if you feel he's attracted to another woman more than he's attracted to you, that's not going to feel very good. You know, so that's just a, and see, this is the thing. This an expert husband, and this is point is made, I think, in the next chapter. An expert husband, he's able to help his wife feel that, you know, for him there's no other person in the world. You know, he's just so attracted to her, yet he's not enamored. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that correctly. Let me see what I think about it. Because ultimately our purpose is to become God conscious. But if we're so attracted to someone in this material world that we kind of lose that focus of God conscious, we're lost. But the psychology of a person is like they need to feel, you know, a woman needs to feel that her husband loves her. A man needs to feel that his wife loves him. That needs to be there. So we need to be able to, in a relationship, act with each other in such a way that our partner feels valued, our partner feels appreciated, our partner feels that they're the most important person in the world to us. And this is one of the reasons in Krishna consciousness why a lot of marriages don't work so well. Because we can't, and Prabhupada describes how to do it again and again in his purpose, but I think one of the things that happens is we can't sort of, not sure what the right word to use here is, but we can't, you know, on the one hand become devotees of Krishna and try to develop our attachment to Krishna and give up our attraction to the material world, and at the same time help our partner to feel that they're a valuable part of our life. It's challenging. And because of our lack of advancement in Krishna consciousness, we don't do a very good job of it. I'm not sure if that answers your question. But yeah, I do see that often, you know, is devotees in marriages, because the partner doesn't feel valued or needed or appreciated, then marriage is a struggle. So, and that's part of Krishna consciousness also, is you know, because there's interesting, I'm not sure if it's here or somewhere else, Prabhupada talks about how there needs to be spiritual equality, that both the members of a relationship need to be of the same caliber of attraction or interest in Krishna consciousness. Because if there's difference, like, you know, say, because one of the partners, one of the persons in a relationship is very advanced in Krishna consciousness, the other one's in Maya, it can create problems. And so there needs to be a degree of compatibility. And that's real compatibility, because materially there is no compatibility, really. Because you look materially, everyone is just in it for themselves. And Prabhupada, he makes the point often that as long as the sex life is compatible in a marriage, in a material marriage, then it works. But as soon as the sex becomes unattractive or incompatible, it falls apart. So it's all based on gratification. But you might say mutual gratification, but actually what it gets down to is I'm just trying to gratify myself, and as long as you can facilitate my gratification, I like you. But as soon as you don't facilitate my gratification, I get rid of you. That's materialistic. But in Krishna consciousness, you know, we're supposed to understand that like, you know, this aspect of it is only about gratifying the senses, but the real compatibility is going to come from our shared interest in Krishna consciousness, from our desire to want to nurture each other's development in Krishna consciousness. That's what marriage is about in Krishna consciousness, not having sex and having babies. That's also going to be there, but that shouldn't be the emphasis. The emphasis needs to be how we can help each other grow in Krishna consciousness. Because that's the goal, is to go back home to Godhead. The goal is not to have a big family. The goal is to go back to Godhead. So marriage needs to be part of that. And it is part of that, and that's what community is about. You'll see in a community, you'll have all different situations, people in all different ashrams, all different walks of life, and all different dispositions. And community is you embrace that, you embrace the differences, not you alienate differences. Okay. So, anything else? Yes, the room.
Just to what you mentioned now, that it's not about children and having a big family. Isn't it also, especially for a woman, she can invest some kind of tendency in, okay, I want to have a child and make that child a devotee and invest in that.
Yeah.
Because
that's exactly my point. If the focus is going back to Godhead for you and for your children, then that's good. But if your focus is, okay, you have children and you want one to become a doctor, you want one to become a lawyer, you want, that's not what it's about. Who was I talking to the other day? Yeah, I was talking to a guy the other day about it, and he was saying, he said to his children, I'd rather you become, I'd be more satisfied if you're a pure devotee of Krishna in jail than you're a successful materialist. So the emphasis has got to be on becoming a pure devotee of Krishna, going back to Godhead. And then it doesn't really matter what your situation is. And you'll see, like, there's pastimes in the scriptures of so, you look at Bilba Mangal Thakur. You look at, there's also a pastime in South India, one of the Alvars, he engaged all these robbers in robbing merchants so he could build a temple for Krishna. So externally, it looks like it's immoral. It looks like, they're performing criminal activities and stuff like that. But what's the motive? What's the Palina Parachiyate, you judge the thing by the result. So what's the outcome? The outcome is glorification of Krishna, the outcome is people becoming purified and going back to Godhead. So we need to look at it from that perspective. We're not trying to, our endeavour should not be to try to further our existence here in this material world, because that is just not a desirable outcome at all. For someone who's intelligent, for someone who's unintelligent, it's great, that's what they want. And for someone who's intelligent, they understand that this material world is a place of suffering. The only solution, I feel, is to go back to Godhead. And this pastime, I think it demonstrates it really well, because we see how both Purvachiti and Agnidra, he's such an expert flatterer. He flatters this girl to the point where she just gives herself completely to him, and she winds up having 9 sons. And she's acting in a way to completely attract her senses. And this is what we see going on in the material world. So okay, the materialists are made to the devotees, we need to understand, we don't do these things. We should be conscious of the way we dress, even when we're dressing in non-devotional clothing, which is not a sin. Sometimes you need to do it. But you don't dress in a way that emphasizes the body. Because that's just them doing the same thing as the materialists are doing. Showing, ladies showing the hips or their breasts, or men, to show off their muscles or whatever. We don't do that. Because look at the outcome of it. Look at what it causes. It causes the opposite, the opposite sex to be attracted to you. And that's not acting responsibly. Because human life is the only existence in this material world where you have responsibility for your actions. Animals, plants, they don't have responsibility. Humans have responsibility for their actions. So every single thing you do that is not directed towards Krishna, you'll get a reaction from it because you're responsible. Only activities, because when you do activities for Krishna, they're nice karma. There's no karma involved. When you do activities that aren't directly focusing on Krishna, then there's karma involved. So if we, for instance, dress in a way or act in a way to attract the opposite sex, we'll get a reaction for that. And they'll have follow-on reactions as well, for us and for others. So we need to be really mindful of how our actions affect others and ultimately affect ourselves. Okay, thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Jai Go Premanandi
Hari Bol, His Grace Nrsimha Kavaca Prabhu ki jai.
Thank you. Sleep on fine. I was so tired last night, I didn't like that. Disturb your sleep, did it? Disturb your sleep.
No, I left my window open because I can't sleep.
Yeah. I'm usually like that. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Because I sent me a text with the dates in it, but I just saw the first day and this is the last day, and I completely forgotten because I lost all my WhatsApp chat history. Yeah. So then other temples asked me to come, so I just assumed to it, not realising.
I was just wanted to ask you if I can meet you.
Yeah.
Just have some
questions. Probably tomorrow's better than today.
Okay. Tomorrow you have also 3 lectures.
Yeah, I got more going on today.
I'll ask you in the morning.
Yeah, just that's not a problem. So the first one's at 10 o'clock, right?
Yes. It's the room right opposite yours. The door right opposite your room. That's the seminar.
Next to the office.
Yes. Do you have a specific time, Nrsimha Kavaca?
Yeah, usually healthy things.
We cook mostly healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I like fruit juices. I've got vegetable juices in the morning. Fruit, king my kitchen.
Today is a healthy cook, so I don't do this.
Good.
Yes.
Do you have a contact of the mother who comes on Wednesday to do this service of
I can
you understood? This whole
step by step. We will see April.
because Marjorie said that she sometimes don't come and she don't know that she can't reach it only.
I told you she was on a vacation till mid of August. I told you that. No?
But now she came.
I don't know. I
Yeah, she came.
will
She said that this night that she
I can send you her number. You can ask her.
Yes. And she also been as I don't know for the service, but she came to the garden as well. And she says that people who is going to do something on the last day, they do
Well, maybe it's better to tell our service on Wednesday she didn't do, and Radhapriya Mataji had to wash the road for 1 week. So I don't know why Anbeen is complaining.
No, she said Wednesday, usually this one. Because she didn't come, she didn't do, she didn't know that.
No, it's not about it's about the sewing room, washing that, because that's what she was on schedule, but she didn't do it. And Wednesday she's going to help, it's not her service. Congregation devotees don't have the service to wash the apron. She's going to help. So you can ask her if she would like to help. You can't force her to help. It's not her service. She has a job. You
But she usually don't do it because she knows that she will do it. But if she doesn't come, she doesn't know that she will come.
But did she do it on next day? On Thursday? Friday? Saturday? Because I can't ask congregation devotees with jobs to be like, oh, why did you come for your service?
Okay, then you can explain to me.
Yeah. Maybe you can explain to her. You can reach out to Steffi, of course, and ask her if she would like to help. And you ask her that, if you can help. But you're responsible if you want to get it done. To be honest. Because I can't use it. Then you ask Albina to wash every day, no problem. Or she can text Steffi and coordinate with her. She has a phone. Albina has a phone. So she can always text Steffi and ask, are you coming? If she says yes, then she doesn't do it.
But if she can't regularly, if she don't come, she says,
yeah, maybe you can coordinate with her. Because she goes on vacation and then I can't tell her don't go on vacation because you have to wash her.
No.
Because all of August she was gone. All of August she was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the class just ended.
Let me pay your obeisances, then I'm there for you.
Krishna Krishna Hare
It's something. Yeah.
So what is the plan now?
Well, we just finished the lecture, so I guess we go. But Sati, I'm so disgusted right now. Now we probably made a comment that the Matajis who don't marry, if they wear beautiful saris and they wear ankle belts, it's very immodest. And I'm sorry, you have a history of lust. You have a history of sexual addiction and you make those comments. Like for God's sake. Yes. I'm so done with these comments.
What's the deal?
Hare Rama,